Story time with Stephanie Story.
Hi, my name is Stephanie Storey. I'm an art historical novelist, but this is my talk show, Story Time. And my guest today is a longtime political writer. He was the former communications director for the mayor of Austin. He currently puts out his own newsletter called The Experiment, where he and his smart friends give you recommendations of things to read and watch and listen to. And I love this description, how to get through the uncertain now. Welcome to the show, Jason Stanford.
Well, thank you. It's glad to be here.
Thank you for joining me. I really do. I'm fascinated by your history of a career that has so much to do with politics and communications in an era when all of those things make me hyperventilate because they seem so complicated and so chaotic right now. So before I ask you about that, can you this is a big, broad question, so I apologize right off the top. Can you take me through what your career has looked like from a standpoint of writing about politics?
Okay. So when I started out, it was the 90s, and we used communication to try to get attention. The internet was, I worked on the first statewide campaign in Texas with a website, and that was something that we campaigned on. Like, we were so modern, we had a website. And all we had on the website was a phone number where people could call us and get information. Like, we didn't have positions on there at all. We just had, it was a contact page. And I think we might have had an email address on there. So, like, we're constantly broadcasting ourselves all the time here. And I don't think a lot of your listeners and your viewers know what it was like in the before times, when there was no internet, and it was constantly trying to get the attention of a very discrete group of people. That's the word. I was trying to think of that word earlier today. Discrete as a word for limited. The press corps. It's about 10 people, middle-aged dudes usually, and trying to get their attention. And so most of my writing was press releases to basically 10 people, trying to get them interested in what we were doing. Even when I was working for, say, the governor of Texas, who got international attention. She was on 60 Minutes, but in a campaign against George W. Bush, which should have gotten constant coverage. All of my communication was at them to try to get them to cover us so someone would know what we wanted them to know. There was no direct communication from the campaign or from a politician to the people.
What are the ways in which storytelling have changed? Like, have those choices changed for political writers these days in which stories you tell versus the older?
I don't think it has. I think everyone tells, there are only so many archetypes of stories, right? There's the Bernie Sanders is a story about barbarians at the gate, that you're storming the castle. Joe Biden's telling a story about restoring a kingdom, returning a deposed king and a royal family to the throne and usurping someone who doesn't deserve it. These are timeless stories. You don't have to reinvent the archetypes. You just update them for the story you're trying to tell.
But in this current age, it's mind-boggling to me to try to get attention. I guess that's what people are still trying to do. Just battle it out and just try to get attention of the people instead of the press now.
Yes, and oftentimes you will, I have found that the best way to get attention of the press is to act like you're not trying to get their attention and to put things where they can discover it. The best example I have of that is when I wrote I ghost wrote the mayor's response on the Wonder Woman letter. You remember when Wonder Woman, the movie, and then the Alamo Drafthouse here in Austin had some women's only screenings, which was, by the way, horribly illegal. You can't segregate your audience by gender, even if you're trying to do something nice by doing something nice for women. Men's rights people freaked out about it. It was hilarious. They started picketing this movie theater chain. And so one guy thought the mayor should do something about it. So this old codger from St. Louis wrote the mayor a letter saying, Mayor, you've got to do something about this. These women haven't ever invented anything, and we're supposed to pretend that this is good. I mean, we're talking about a superhero movie. And so the mayor's chief of staff came to me and says, Jason, we can do something good here. And so we wrote a letter back that we posted on the mayor's blog that said, basically, dear sir, something horrible has happened. Obviously, a complete and utter moron has hacked into your email account and sent us an email. We wanted you to alert, because obviously you know that women have invented lots of things, and now they can serve openly in combat units in the military, and heck, they can even vote. Did you know they invented beer? I mean, my God, of course a gentleman like you, an upstanding citizen, would know this. And I would hate for the person of such low intelligence to besmirch your character. Please go change your password. And we could have just sent this to the media. Instead, we put it on his blog and then just kind of let them discover it, because when the press discovers it and they think they're not being sold it, then they'll start blowing it up. So sometimes the way to get attention is to act like you're not trying to get attention. I find, though, that generally getting attention for things is far, far easier than it ever has been, just because of all the different ways you can do it. Yes.
Why? Because it feels so impossible, because it feels like everybody's screaming into the same storm to me. Do you know what I mean?
But today, 2 black kids who have a little vlog series about them just watching old songs got worldwide famous today because they freaked out about a Phil Collins song and Jolene. Yeah. That never in a million years would have happened 20 years ago. Like, the means of production are in everyone's hands right now. The barrier to entry, we do not have the gatekeepers, and we have a disintermediated storytelling environment that we have never had before in the history of civilization. Getting attention is not the issue. Getting the story right is the hard part. There's lots of idiots yelling.
Well, that's what I started to say. So the way you're making it all sounds so good. So why does communication feel, particularly political communication right now, feel so broken?
Well, it's because the world's broken. I mean, I don't know how, I think it's kind of appropriate to the moment. Donald Trump is president. What were you expecting from political communication? He can't pronounce Thailand.
No, I know. And I was just having this discussion with someone this morning who was saying, I'm sorry, when he's president, you can't expect other people to communicate in a sane way. You can't.
Yes.
But I sort of do. I still have this ideal that other people should continue to communicate in a civilized manner. Is that my own? Am I just naive?
No. Well, so that's the stress of being alive and aware in America right now, and in fact the world. The stress is knowing what we could be, because not too long ago Barack Obama could string together entire paragraphs, in fact essays, rhetorically. He could explain the world and make us feel calmer. Bill Clinton can do that to a different extent, and we should give him credit. George W. Bush was able to communicate verbally an interpretation of reality that made sense to a lot of people.
Yes.
He was also able to do it in a way that was kind of winning. He was able to communicate a bit of his self in a way where you go, oh, okay, I like that guy.
Well, that was the argument with him. You could sit down and have a beer with him. That's what that was the argument with George W. Bush, right? With so much of the country was, well, I could have a beer with him. I would like to sit down and have a beer with him. No, I get it. He had.
Right. But he was able to tell that story about himself. He was able to play that character in a way where, no one says that about Donald Trump. No one says I could sit down and have a beer with him. He is like the angry king that a lot of people enjoy. So I think what we have now is a political communication environment that meets the moment. What we have is pretty much, we're living through worst case scenario. I don't know, and I think a certain amount of freaking out is appropriate to the story. What we have right now is one large societal scream in a way. And we do all feel like it should be better and that we should be getting better communicators. And when we do hear people talk, as we did at John Lewis's memorial, we remember who we are. I remember at South by Southwest in 2018, and John Kerry came down. His memoir had come out, and he gave this hour-long interview, and it was a shock to be in the room with a politician who could speak eloquently, and it reminded me of how we were different than what we're going through right now. And I think that communication, as you are looking for, that kind of storytelling, is the counterpoint, is the relief to the moment right now. And that in some ways, the most eloquent expression of what we're going through right now is screaming. You know, the chanting, the angry chanting, no justice, no peace, and I can't breathe, and that shouts for help are the story that we're hearing right now. That we'd want it to be better. We want a better time, but right now we can't be getting better communication for this time.
So so from a communication standpoint, I've asked this of other people on different fronts, but this current social moment, right, with all of the protests and all of the I always hate calling it uprising, but all of the protests.
It's hard to know what to call it, isn't it?
It is. Like the word, I always stop because I'm good with protest. Uprising or revolt has this like violent undertone to it that I think the majority of the protests are so peaceful that I hate giving it that sort of violent connotation.
But I think you're right. Uprising is right. It is perfect that people are rising up and demanding change. Yeah. It's not really a revolution, but it is an uprising. I love that. That's perfect.
Okay. So all of these protests and social uprising that we're going through, I get worried that there's this spike of energy, and then that spike of energy is going to go away, and there's not going to be the kind of systemic change that we need, as we have seen happen so often in our nation's history, particularly with racial issues, where we've had spikes and we've had movement, but we haven't really had the since at least the Voting Rights Act, haven't had these like major changes. We keep falling into the same patterns. From a communication standpoint, how can communicators use this moment to continue forwarding the energy to hopefully push for the systemic change that's needed? Do you know what I mean? Like if the protest itself is a form of communication, how can we then take that form of communication and amplify it to push for the change that needs to happen?
Normally, the hard thing in political communication, like you say, is you get attention, and then it just kind of the inertia goes back to it. Yeah. There's no gravity anymore. Like, what do we remember in April when we talked about the new normal, and like we're going back to work, and then they opened it up too early, and I guess we're not going back to work now, ever. And so there's no reverting to mean now because there's no mean. So we are in a period of intense and quick transformation in all facets of our society. Everything is changing at scale and at speed. Every single industry I'm advising at work is cramming years of transformation into just a few months. And they're doing this out of necessity because, well, people aren't going to behave the same way anymore. No one's ever going to grocery shop, go to restaurants, go to movies, do anything in the same way that they ever did before. So all of these industries are changing. Everything is moving forward at a speed we're never going to see in our lifetimes. Probably, or not this tumultuously. We are becoming, and it's not just a speeding up. We are becoming a new thing at the same time. So, as a story that we are telling, we're talking about what we're becoming. We don't have to worry about continuing to get attention. What we have to worry about is what is the next thing we want to become. So we can talk about the future in a way that is immediate. This is not a future that is, talking about our sons and daughters will be able to play together. This isn't Martin Luther King on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial. This is talking about next week. And it is the fierce urgency of now.
But I did want to go back to something that you said earlier about we were talking about Donald Trump being sort of a symptom or a symbol of this broken communication. Do you think he came from a cycle of communication that was already broken, Or do you, it's like a chicken and the egg question, or do you think he is feeding it? Like, or is it?
So I think we would be living in a very different world if Mitt Romney or Jeb Bush had gotten the nomination. But I think that for a long time, the Republican Party had this base of voters who half of Texas Republicans want to secede from the Union, or did under Obama.
Yeah.
So I think part of it was there was that base of votes there for him. And part of it was he has legitimate star power. I saw him speak at a rally at the Capitol in DC in 2015, and Ted Cruz was there, Sarah Palin was there. They're speaking out against the Iran nuclear deal. And Ted Cruz is Ted Cruz, right? He's a champion debater, as he never. He's for politics. He's great. And then Donald Trump gets up there. And I felt differently because he was more in command of the stage. Like he knew what to do with attention. He wasn't an A student who was getting attention. This was the quarterback speaking with the A students. This guy knew how to perform in public. Politics is filled with a whole bunch of really smart kids who wanted to go be stars, right? This is a star who wanted to act like a smart kid. And I think some of it is he's just a charismatic demagogue. And I think once we get rid of him, people are going to be trying to take his place, but there is no one who can take his place. And it's going to be very hard for them to if the election proceeds as it looks like it is, and Democrats win back the Senate, and the base of the Democratic Party now is in no mood to make peace. To win back voters, especially from the youngest two generations, which is the largest two in human history, Republicans are going to have to suffer probably a couple more election cycles because their base is not willing to sacrifice or embrace things like climate change and the spherical shape of the planet. So I don't think we're going to find immediate peace right away, but I think for a while in the public sphere, the discourse will be much improved because we can all exhale.
Your newsletter is very funny. Like,
no, thank you.
You make me laugh a lot when I read it. And obviously,
Try the jokes.
Probably, but the story you brought up about the mayor earlier about posting that letter about posting that response. Oh, someone must have hacked your account. That's very, very funny. Do you find humor to be an important part or a part of political writing, and why?
When I worked at City Hall, I thought everything was hilarious, but what I thought the funniest thing is how seriously everyone was treating it. One time, there was a city council member, so they would meet in executive session, locked away, and as they should be, to confer with lawyers, and one of them wanted some crackers from the snack room. Now, because we have a city manager form of government, the council is like the board, and the city manager is like the CEO, and everyone under the CEO reports to the city manager. The council doesn't actually tell anyone what to do except for the city manager. But one of the council members came out of the room and told basically a janitor, said, "Open the snack room. I want to get some peanut butter crackers." He realized he couldn't. Like, one, they didn't belong to her. It would be technically a misappropriation of about 49 cents. But also, he was not allowed to. It wasn't, he would have to answer to his supervisor and whatnot. She did not, this council member did not accept that answer. And it escalated. Another council member had to come out and say, these crackers belong to the people, or some such. And you're having the reaction I did. The people telling me this were like, they were very offended that she was asking for the crackers. Like, she should have known better. I'm like, okay, that's even funnier. When people treat the most ridiculous stuff seriously, then I'm like, well, no, we have to say how funny this is. This is funny. And I just, it's
a lot like an episode of Veep. Sorry.
I can't watch Veep. It's too true. It's like we watch West Wing because we think we're like that, and then we watch Veep and hide in shame. Like, oh yeah, sorry. No, humor is absolutely, I think it's the only way to, we live in, it's a very cruel world. And and if we treat everything deadly serious, then I think we miss a lot of the meaning, because it's also very absurd at the same time. And if we treat the absurd things like they're serious, then we lose people and we lose the actual meaning of things. And it's a form of lying. And I don't think you can honestly lead people if you're denying. It's a way to deny that the emperor's wearing no clothes.
Right.
And I don't think that's just not honest. That's why Jon Stewart hired, researchers and fact checkers for The Daily Show, because he said the jokes aren't funny if they're not true. And that's why I argue that's one of two big reasons why Republicans aren't funny.
Because they're not honest?
Because, the jokes just aren't true. And they're not joking about something that's true. I mean, it's funny because it's true. It has to actually resonate with you. If it's a lie, then someone's trying to get you to, and then they bring up the other part of a Republican. The problem with Republican humor is that their humor is based on meanness, on making fun of other people and othering other people.
Yeah.
That is a sort of smarminess to it that is which is why Republicans can get away with themselves by saying, "Oh, Trump was just joking with that horrible tweet where he demeaned people," because that fits in their paradigm of humor. It's not funny at all. There's nothing funny about this. Yeah. It's just mean. It's performative cruelty. That's not funny.
You put out, speaking of the funny newsletter, you put out this newsletter. You obviously don't have to. It is for yourself and for your readers and for your fans. I understand what impact it could make, because you could change somebody's opinion and you could shed some light on an issue or give people something to go read or watch or distract themselves during crazy, crazy times. So I understand what value it provides out into the world. I want to know what value it provides to you as a writer to put it out.
So it lets me have my say. So for most of my career, I've been able to have my say. And now I'm working in corporate America where they don't want to see me in the paper, trashing the president. I don't get to really speak out politically. And also I'm not interested in that fight anymore, because it's just like a performative slap fight. You're not there to actually convince anyone. You're there to fill, you're being cast in a role. Okay, we need a Democrat to say this thing. Okay. And I'm more interested now in what things actually are and what they mean. And even something as silly as what Jason Statham's dives in the movie The Meg mean, which I've studied that more than anyone ever should. And each dive represents something really meaningful, I would argue.
That's ridiculous. Go.
Yeah. But so, I would start to, I felt a little stifled. And it was just a way for me to not, it was just purely as a form of self-expression at first. So I could think things through and experience the joy of writing. I'd never understood writers who say, I like having written something, I don't like writing. Like, I just, like, why? Then you're missing all the fun, the joy of creation. And I missed that joy of creation. And then something happened that had never happened in my career before. I mean, I'd been a syndicated columnist, I'd been on TV. It's not like people hadn't read what I'd written before, but this is the first time they ever emailed back, and I would have conversations with my readers, and it became this community, and I knew who I was writing for. And so the newsletter became a conversation. And as that grew, and then I had to leave it for a while for a book project, I thought, well, how fun would it be if my community, if the readers, if they could read some of my favorite writers who no one knows, and like the woman I worked in Moscow with, who's got this great memoir, and my buddy Frank in New Mexico, and so bringing those people in and help, making it a platform where people can tell their stories and try new things, and if they've got a funny idea, they could work it out there. It's sort of like it's a comedy club, you got an act you want to work on? Cool, I'll give you a stage, But I want it to be a play. Too much of writing, to my mind, I don't know how you feel about this, but there's this conceit of modern narrative nonfiction where the writer's voice disappears into the material. Some of that, I mean, it's brilliant stuff, right? But there's Pam Koloff and all that Texas Monthly vibe where it's genius writing. But I couldn't, like, except by knowing who the constructs and what people like to write about, I couldn't tell someone's voice from another person's voice. Like, it's not Carl Hyacin or Frank Sinatra gets a cold. Those were voices. But now there's so much value placed on the voiceless writer who just has such a command of the material, and I miss the voices. And so I wanted to create I saw that this could be a platform for voice, and I like reading someone's voice when they're just having fun, a Damon Runyon or something like that. And that's what I like about writing is being able to do the voice. And so that's what the newsletter has become. It's been a place for readers to discover new writers and a platform for voices.
What struck me about that, and what I will never forget, is you saying that there's now a value in a voiceless writer.
Yeah.
That is, like, to me, the most heartbreaking thing on the planet, because that's the whole reason you become a writer, right? It's to develop a voice. It's to have something to say in your particular way of saying it.
Yep.
Oh my. Okay, but wait, one last question. You said book project. Are you working on a book? What's happening?
Yes, very close to turning in a book with Penguin Random House about the Alamo. It will be a historiography of the Alamo and all the different stories we've told about the Alamo over the years and how it's changed and what it means now.
Oh, that's exciting. Oh, that's fantastic. Congratulations. That's,
Thank you.
Are you loving the longer thing?
Yes.
Okay.
And so that should be coming out next spring, and I'm rewriting a political satire, and I hope to get that done very soon.
Oh, great. Okay, good.
Yes.
So we have longer form things to look forward to. Excellent.
Absolutely. Yes.
Excellent. Thank you so much for joining me, Jason. This was a fascinating, thought-provoking conversation.
With Stephanie story time virtually. We've got time and plenty of stories, talking stories in a novel way. Story time with Stephanie Story.